Before we begin, I just want my viewers to know that this will be an audio-only video. I've decided to do this in an attempt to see if there's a significant drop in viewer retention in audio-only videos versus those with visuals. Editing takes time, and if the audience doesn't care whether or not there's images attached to these videos, it could save me some time in the future. What do you think? Personally, I don't think it will go over well, but I'm curious to receive all feedback. Thank you. A city is drowned in war. A tyrant seeks to achieve godhood. And a hero gives up his life to save the day. War of the Spark was more than just a set. More than just a story. It was the finale of the Gatewatch saga, the culmination of nearly 5 years of storytelling. It was supposed to be a grand ending, an epic final battle between the heroic Gatewatch and the monstrous Nicol Bolas. We watched as this team of planeswalkers came together to save Zendikar from the Eldrazi, and pledged to protect the multiverse from similar threats. On Innistrad, they fought the final Eldrazi Titan, and on Kaladesh, they helped a revolution fight against a corrupt consulate. But on Amonkhet, their string of victories came to an end. In a viciously one-sided confrontation with the Elder Dragon Nicol Bolas, the Gatewatch was defeated. Broken and scattered, their members were left to regroup and strengthen up. Gideon and Liliana, and later Chandra, went to Dominaria, while Nissa would break her oath and return home. On Ixalan, Jace would come to understand some of Bolas's schemes, and would try to rally his allies back to Ravnica, where he believed the dragon would make his play. But when the Gatewatch finally regroups, they find they're too late, and Nicol Bolas's invasion has already begun. This leads us into War of the Spark, which has since gone down in history as one of the worst Magic the Gathering novels. Now, I'm not going to sit here and analyze the story for what it is. I'm not a critic, and I believe giving a full review of War of the Spark is something best done by others, people with the time and education to give it a proper breakdown. No, this is a what-if of sorts. Not a look at the writing of the story, but the story itself. What if the events of War of the Spark played out just a bit differently? Before we begin, please note, this will be just one possible alternate way that the events of War of the Spark could have gone down. You may be looking for something different in the grand finale of the Gatewatch saga, and that's okay. I very much doubt that this will satisfy everyone who listens to it. After all, I hold doubts that it's possible to make a perfect story out of War of the Spark, but nevertheless, this is my attempt to improve what we got, even if only a little. Like my previous speculation videos, this will dive deep into the fanfiction side of Magic. With all of that said and out of the way, let's begin. The first major change will be one that takes place well before the war itself. Nicol Bolas is prideful, arrogant, and strongly believes in relying on his own power to achieve his goals. But deep down, he knows that there is always a risk of someone else getting the better of him. It's happened before, and it could happen again. The dragon is too prideful to have allies, but he is not above having minions. He'll scour the multiverse for servants, both willing and unwilling, to further his goals. Tezzeret is already assured. With the planar portal embedded in his body, Tezzeret will serve as the bridge for Bolas's Eternals to enter into Ravnica. Dovin Baan is also recruited fairly early. With vague promises of order and perfection, Bolas is able to convince the Vidalcan to guard the immortal sun, trapping any planeswalker that enters Ravnica. Tybalt and Ashiok are both fine choices. It would be easy for Bolas to convince or coerce them into his services, and both would make excellent distractions for his invasion plan. With their particular brands of magic, either would be a massive thorn in the side of potential defenders. The demon, Ob Nixilis, already nursing a grudge against the Gatewatch, would also be a sensible addition to Bolas's army. Once more, Nixilis is no stranger to war, and is powerful in his own right. Perhaps when the invasion begins, Bolas will grant the demon his own legion of the Dreadhorde to campaign with, increasing the theater of war further. Ramaz, so easily forgotten, is already in Bolas's service. In this, the dragon's endgame, it would be only sensible to use all weapons at your disposal, and Ramaz's shamanic magic may be put to good use combating the Selesnya or Gruul mages. In the canon timeline, Bolas evidently went to great lengths to keep Garruk Wildspeaker away from Ravnica. The dragon knew all too well that Garruk is especially talented in slaying planeswalkers that Bolas would harvest for his Elder Spell. Here, however, the dragon embraces the possibility that brute savagery may occasionally be useful. Garruk will serve as a blunt instrument, thrown against any would-be defenders putting up too much resistance. Bolas does not recruit the hunter per se, but perhaps has another servant, maybe Ramaz, lead Garruk to Ravnica, towards perhaps the greatest hunt of all. And finally, much like in the canon timeline, Bolas recruits Liliana Vess. With her demon contractors dead, Liliana's pact defaults to Bolas's possession, and he has great need of her. The bulk of Bolas's Dreadhorde will need to be directed, a task the dragon has chosen Liliana to carry out. Several of the guilds are destabilized before the Eternals ever step foot on Ravnica. The death of Esperia allows Dovin Bond to seize emergency powers in the Azorius Senate and pull back their defenses. Domri Raid's influence on the Gruul leaves them scattered and disorganized. Bolas threatens Vraska to hold back her erstwhile army, and the ghosts of the Orzhov are freed by Kaya. With this, 4 of the 10 guilds are effectively crippled, their armies disorganized and ill-prepared to combat the coming invasion. As a final piece of preparation, Bolas enters Ravnica personally, slaying Niv Mizzet and removing what he saw as the greatest threat. Now fully prepared to enact his plan, the dragon signals for Tezzeret to open the planar bridge, unleashing his armies onto Ravnica. Bolas's invasion begins in force. The dragon has had considerable time to prepare, while the guilds are weakened and the Gatewatch is few in number. His Dreadhorde, commanded by Liliana, spreads out and begins wreaking devastation across the 10th district, spreading like wildfire over the streets of Ravnica. The Boros Legion assembles quickly, armed and ready to fight. They are the first response to the Dreadhorde, and quickly establish a perimeter, trying to contain Bolas's legions. Ob Nixilis takes the opportunity to spearhead a campaign separate from the main invasion, creating a two-headed front. Meanwhile, Tybalt and Ashiok begin to sow chaos in the streets far from the invasion point. Deep in Selesnyan territory, Ramaz is battling against druids and keeping their forces occupied. Jace, Chandra, Gideon, Nissa, Teferi, and Ajani do what they can to protect the citizens of Ravnica. Evacuating people out of the 10th, they try to formulate a counteroffensive to Bolas's invasion, though they are fighting a defensive battle as the Dreadhorde marches forward. Jace attempts to bring the entire invasion to an end using his authority as the Guild Pact, the living embodiment of order on Ravnica. Though he puts up a good fight, Jace is a mortal man, and his body cannot sustain the energies necessary to fight against Bolas on equal terms. Spent, he realizes that they would need a truly powerful being to wield the Guild Pact. It is here that Ralzeric reveals that Niv Mizzet had contingencies in place. The dragon had his soul preserved in case of his death, and the interplanar beacon was built to draw in planeswalkers to bolster Ravnica's defenses. Zarek activates the beacon, and Jace, alongside Nissa and Vraska, begin the task of assembling representatives of the guilds to revive Niv Mizzet and transfer the power of the Guild Pact into the Firemind. The interplanar beacon turns out to be part of Bolas's schemes. As planeswalkers from across the multiverse arrive, Nicol Bolas activates the Elder Spell. His Dreadhorde, now spread out over much of Ravnica, begin to harvest sparks as confused planeswalkers arrive. Ajani and Teferi rally as many planeswalkers as they can scrounge up, and together try to formulate a plan to strike back at the dragon. At the same time, representatives from the guilds come together in an attempt to revive Niv Mizzet. Ramaz attacks the assembly, using his shaman magic to disrupt the ley lines they were using to bring back the dragon. A battle breaks out, and Jace realizes that Bolas knows what they are planning. A detachment of the Dreadhorde, led by Ob Nixilis, was on its way to eliminate them. While the guild representatives try to revive Niv Mizzet, Gideon arrives on scene with Chandra and members of the Boros Legion. Ob Nixilis and Gideon clash, their forces slamming into one another. The battle is fierce, but Gideon has grown both as a fighter and a leader since he last fought the demon, and is able to edge out a win, forcing Ob Nixilis to flee. Victory is short-lived, however, as the towering might of Bolas's God Eternals appears on the horizon. His ultimate weapons, the God Eternals, march in opposite directions, destroying large chunks of the Ravnican skyline as they go. As hope seems lost, Niv Mizzet's revival is completed, and with the powers of the Guild Pact, he prepares to make a counter-offensive. All of Ravnica's forces are commanded to assemble and fight back against the tide of Bolas's invasion, and the assembled planeswalkers are sent out to complete key objectives. Tybalt and Ashiok are defeated and apprehended by a team led by Teferi, while Chandra's team overpowers Bon and turns off the Immortal Sun. A team led by Jace turns off the interplanar beacon, while another group passes through the planar bridge to defeat Tezzeret and cut off the supply of Eternals. Here, much like in the main timeline, they recover the Spear of Hazaret. Garrick has been rampaging through the streets of the city, led here by Bolas's schemes. He is able to cut down walkers left and right, practically bathing in their blood, until he comes to blows with Karn. Garrick is mighty and vicious, but Karn is stronger, more resilient, and far more intelligent. The hunter is put out of commission by the Golem, who rushes to rejoin his allies. Nissa uses her connection to the ley lines of Ravnica to animate Vitu-Ghazi and hold off Runis. Rakdos, meanwhile, battles and dismembers Kefnet. Oketra and Bantu are recalled to Bolas's side to prepare for a coming assault. Before the final battle can begin, Bolas enacts vengeance on those who aided the Ravnicans. Vraska's undead army is turned against her, and she is slain trying to protect Jace, while Domri is overrun by the Eternals and harvested. Ralzeric, who had previously played Nicol Bolas as a double agent, is mentally overwhelmed by the dragon personally and killed. Many planeswalkers, alongside the armies of Ravnica, push hard against the Dread Horde. Leading the charge is the Gatewatch, united to bring down a mighty foe once again. The battle is long, grueling, and many lives are lost. Mighty heroes of Amonkhet's past make for some of the most powerful Eternals, and need to be put down by skilled combatants like Sorin and Gideon. It is now that Liliana sees her opportunity to have freedom once again. Spurred on by a hatred of Nicol Bolas's dominance and regret in the lives she's taken, she orders the Eternals to turn on their master. Here is where the greatest change occurs. As Bolas uses the pact to destroy Liliana for her betrayal, it is not Gideon who steps forward, but Ajani. With his power over the soul, the Leonin transfers Liliana's contract and its consequences into himself. As he burns away, Ajani once again achieves victory over Nicol Bolas. Thanks to Ajani's sacrifice, Liliana is free to assault Bolas. Eternals crawl all over the dragon's body, pulling out harvested sparks one by one. The God Eternals attack, and though Oketra is blasted into oblivion, Bantu's jaws find their home in the dragon's arms. Niv Mizzet takes this opportunity to attack Bolas with Hazaret's spear, and Gideon slashes away at the dragon with the Black Blade. Though Bolas is weakened, he is not done for. He repels his attackers even as he feels more and more of his collected power fade away. Finally, Ob Nixilis, ever the opportunist, arrives behind the dragon and assaults him with demonic magic. This gives the Gatewatch the opening they need. They use their combined powers to pin Bolas down and watch as his collected sparks are ripped away until only one remains. Here, much like in the main timeline, Ugin intervenes, attempting to take Bolas away and imprison him in a bid to prevent the dragon from ever returning. However, Bolas's last spark, the one he was born with, is finally ripped out of his body. As Nicol Bolas perishes, Kaya, whose specialty is destroying specters, steps in to ensure that his spirit is destroyed. Furious, yet understanding, Ugin departs Ravnica, as do most of the assembled planeswalkers. Nicol Bolas is dead and destroyed. The world has suffered grievous casualties and a great deal of destruction. The Gatewatch and their allies celebrate a victory hard won, mourn the sacrifices that needed to be made, and begin the long journey of rebuilding. So, what did you think? Is this version of events more or less satisfying than the book we received? Perhaps these changes weren't enough, or maybe they were too much. I'm not a fantasy author. I'm just a Vorthos exploring what I think could have been. Do you like what I came up with, or not? Let me know in the comments section below. Thank you very much for listening all the way through. If you wish to support me, there will be a link to my Patreon page below. Like, share, and subscribe, and, as always, have a great day.